My name is David, and this is The Big Shut-In. It's Tuesday, June the 2nd, day 80 since my family and I went into lockdown. And tonight I talked to Collin Howard, who is a performer here in New York. He's an actor and a singer, and a very interesting guy. And he's a black man. And he's someone who hadn't marched before, who hadn't demonstrated before, but who had spent a lot of time thinking about the country and the systems we all live under. And the recent protests in his neighborhood, he lives up in Harlem, around the city and around the country and around the world, really drew him out, and he found it to be a really profound experience. And I got the feeling that I got a little peek into watching someone come into themselves as an activist. I really enjoyed talking to him about that and hearing about that experience and what surrounded it and what preceded it and what followed it. And so without further ado, I'll hand things over to Collin.
Well, right now I'm really just overeating and eating my feelings and counting the days till we can get back to normal.
And they're delicious. They're delicious, aren't they? Your feelings right now? Just scrumptious feelings.
They're so scrumptious.
Just spread them on toast, man. They taste so good. So tell me about your, I feel like we have these nested catastrophes going on right now.
Yeah.
Catastrophe A, the epidemic, the lockdown, sort of what was your situation there? Do you live alone? Are you living with friends? Like who are you locked in with?
I am alone now. I have two roommates who we were in this together, and then I blinked and one left a note, got on a plane and headed back home to Berkeley, California. And before I knew it, the other one disappeared to her family's house down in Virginia. So it's me in this big old 3-bedroom apartment by myself. And for someone who doesn't necessarily enjoy being by themselves, I love people. I'm most comfortable when I'm around people. It was really hard. The isolation really got to me. I don't think I underestimated what this was going to be. You know what I mean? I
think we all did at first.
Yes. I was not prepared. I like routine. Now I don't have a job. And that was cool for like the first couple days or the first week. But I was aimless. And I found myself, I didn't know what to do with my day. But as time has gone by, you acclimate, or some of us acclimate. And now this seems so normal, which is so scary because it has only been 3 months. It's not that long.
It's kind of a long time to be in solitary confinement, though, honestly.
I mean, but I don't really think it's solitary anymore because I've always been able to, or we have always been able to go to the park. I live a couple blocks from Central Park. People have always been out this whole time. Now, you're out for maybe a few minutes or an hour of the day, and it's not like going to the gym or a restaurant, but that's what kind of kept me sane. Going out for a few hours, I would take walks. In the morning, I would come back. I'm bored. I guess I'll go walk Central Park again, come back. Well, I'm bored again. It's time to go to bed. So I did a lot of walking, and that has not kept the weight off, that's for sure. But it has kept my sanity-ish.
Well, so sanity-wise, particularly now that we've added catastrophe number 2 to the mix of all the protesting and social unrest, how are you? How are you doing?
Thank you for asking. And it's a question that I don't I don't think I've been asked so many or so much in recent memory. It's as if somebody in my family has passed, and people, want to check up on you and they're like, "How are you today?" I get so many messages in my inbox from my friends who are white and, just asking, "How are you?" And today I'm good. Um, I I was off social media today because I found that it's draining, and like many people, I can get caught up in these, social media debates on Facebook, and it's exhausting and it's draining. And because I'm not working, I have all the time in the world to devote to these debates. So I had to sign off from there. But today I'm good. Thank you for asking.
You're welcome? Question mark. Is it a question you? I mean, is being checked on by scores of white people a comfort, or does it feel patronizing at this
No,
point?
no, no. It's not patronizing at all. These are people who I have relationships with, who I've gone to college. Actually, it's so interesting. It's people who I'm close friends with, of course, and it's also people who I haven't seen or talked to in eons, who I went to college with. I graduated in 2005, who I guess, they see my, my Facebook, and, like a lot of people, I'm talking a lot about what's going on, and they're really just checking in. They really want to know, how are you and what can I do? Whether it be, what can I do to help you personally, or what can I do as a white person to show that I'm with you? Because it's very different what I can do and what white people can do in this situation is very different.
And when so tell me about your first awareness of the George Floyd situation, and kind of what your initial reaction was, and what the initial reaction you were sort of feeling in your neighborhood was when that went down.
I guess when it first happened, I must have picked up on the story when it hit national news. The sad thing is, I didn't initially think anything of it. I'm so anesthetized to this stuff. It's just like, okay. And I believe, it was right after what happened in Georgia. So I think I was still on that. That story was the one where I was like, oh my God, because it was a modern day lynching. These men went after this man. That's the story, and that's the video that was circulating, and we were just like, oh my God, what's going on here?
I'd almost forgotten about that Georgia story.
See, and isn't that terrible?
It's terrible. I mean, this is 2020. Like,
we forgot about the Georgia story, and then in between that, there's Breonna Taylor in Louisville, which is the young lady who was in bed with her boyfriend. She was a public servant in the city, and cops mistakenly thought there was some criminal there that they were looking for, but turns out they had already arrested the guy, and they lit her place up, killing her. And her boyfriend pulled out a gun on the cops because they didn't identify themselves, and they tried to charged him with attempted murder. Luckily, those charges were dropped. But it's a whole mess. So initially, it's like, another guy died at the hands of police. Okay, it's like school shootings now, where that is really sad. Carry on with my day, because we're just so used to it. But then when when it started picking up steam is when I really started to take notice. And then before you know it, now we have protests. And I think anybody who has been around long enough, whether it's been through the Rodney King riots or even older, my parents or maybe your parents, protest is always always going to boil over into something else. But I did not expect it to take it to go where it is now across the world. We have people in Iran peacefully protesting on our behalf. Germany, London. It's absolutely incredible.
When did you make the decision to go out and march and be a part of the protests that were happening?
So this was my first protest, and I saw the protest going on, and somebody sent me something on Friday saying there was a protest this past Saturday. I said, I'm going to that. I have to go. It was only up the street, so if anything popped off and went south, I could quickly make an exit back to the comfort of my apartment. We got up there, and
so this is Saturday night, and this is in Harlem?
This was Saturday day from 12 to 2 in front of the Adam Clayton Powell State Building. And, of course, it was there. So I get there, and the first thing I see is it's everybody. It's a rainbow. And that warmed my heart because, of course, people of color are going to be there. This fight is for us. But to see, white people, Latinos, Indian, everybody was well represented. So it just felt good. First walking, having never witnessed this, I felt like, okay, I'm here. My presence is enough, and I wasn't chanting or anything. But then something happened, and I got caught up in it, and I started crying multiple times. I'm watching people honk as we're walking down, and watching the bus drivers, city employees honk and fist bump and all that. I could well up thinking about it now. Actually, it was completely overwhelming. And when I got home that evening, between Saturday and all day Sunday, I was a mess. I was so emotionally drained. I said, oh, I can't do this more than at least once a week. I'll go out again, but there was no way I was going out on Sunday. I thought to myself, I can't imagine what it must have been like for people during the civil rights. If I went out for 5 hours on one day to protest and I'm home a mess, what was it like for these people who did this for years? Man.
How do you feel about police officers generally in your life? What goes through your mind when you interact with the police?
I was thinking about this. I was talking to my mother about this today. I am very fortunate that I haven't had a negative interaction with police. I know what can happen. I've had my parents give me the talk. But
tell me about the talk. What's the talk?
The talk, the talk is when you definitely, this happened for me at least, because I'm from the suburbs. My talk may have happened later in life. It was when I got my license. So, if you get stopped by the cops, which I did a number of times, you keep those hands on the steering wheel. You don't talk back. It's a yes, sir, no, sir. No matter what, even if whatever they say to you, you keep your cool, and it's a yes, sir, no, sir. We'll deal with it after the fact. but your job is to get out of there in one piece and not have a situation escalate, which sucks because that shouldn't be my responsibility. An officer is a professional. I'm potentially full of fear or whatever heightened emotion. The officer is supposed to be the level-headed person here. You're trained for this, but they're human beings. I have family that are police officer, FBI agents, detectives. I don't view police officers in a negative light per se. Even the other day, I walk past police officers and I tell them all the time, I was like, please be safe. I don't want harm to come to police officers. But I also recognize that they close ranks on their own when something goes wrong. And there's a systemic abuse of power that has been going on for generations and generations. And they get away with this stuff with impunity. And that's a problem. And Black people aren't the only targets of police brutality, but we're definitely the majority. You know what I mean? And
for sure.
But I know there are good cops out there. I know that. I think anybody who would argue otherwise is delusional. But the system is broken. The system is 100% broken across the board in all 50 states.
Would you hesitate if you were in trouble? If your apartment was robbed? Would you hesitate to call on the police to help you?
Yeah, I'm Black. Of course I would. I think culturally, and this could be a blanket statement, but I would argue that a number of Black people would say we try to keep the police out of our lives as much as possible. There are too many cases of us calling, where was this? The young lady in, I want to say Texas, who her neighbor, she left her front door open and her neighbor called the cops for a wellness check and she ended up dead. They shot her through the blinds while she was playing a video game with her nephew. So yeah, we don't call the police unless we have to. And that's awful. One, our taxes pay for these people. This is their job to protect us, and we're terrified of them because even if we're the victim, we could end up dead. And that's the sad reality. So no, I don't. I would prefer not to call the police if I didn't have to.
I was talking to somebody yesterday, and it strikes me that there's two different functions, different philosophies of the function of a police department in our country, and that I think there's what I'm observing is that there's a line down the middle of particularly most urban police departments about what their function is. And the first one of those things is kind of what we teach, what white people anyway teach their children police are for, which is, help you if you're in trouble, catch the bad guys, right? That's one philosophy of policing. And there's this other thing, and it was interesting you were saying about we want to keep the police out of our thing. And I think there's a significant faction in the country, in police departments, that see the function of police as really maintaining that line between white people and Black people, between the city and the suburbs, between, and this language is sort of military language of holding the line. We are the thin blue line, standing on the wall. Like, what is that wall? Where is that line?
Right.
Why is there a line? Why is there a wall? It strikes me that that kind of internal schizophrenia
Right. Yeah.
in police departments of what their job actually is maybe what's going on now, what's coming out in all of this.
Yeah, and I
Into
think
fuller view.
that spills over into, like you just said, well, white people and black people, we view the police different. Because if you go on Facebook, where you're most likely to get someone's honest opinion or their views because they feel safe, I am more likely to read comments from white people that are in like blind support of the police department and this cognitive dissonance to what's actually going on around them, even though it's it's clear as day. But I got in a Facebook discussion with like 5 people this week about, but the police, these poor police, they're having people yell at them, and in some cases they're getting injured, and I'm thinking, hello, I get that, and I don't want that to happen, but you understand that the police are killing people of color, right? And nothing. It's not, all they see is the police, because the police to them are their saviors. They're there to help them because their privilege allows that, has afforded them that right, that the police are there, and in some cases they're like their personal security force, as Amy Cooper and the Karens who call the police when black people aren't acting the way that they think they should, that the Karens of the world thinks that they should,
which is silently somewhere where they can't be seen, I think.
Right. Why are you in my neighborhood? Why? I don't like that you're playing this music in this free, open space that I actually have no authority over, but I'm going to call the police because my privilege affords me that right. And in doing that, most of the time, these people don't understand what you are. When you call the cops on people of color, you are potentially helping end this person's life. I know that sounds extreme, but it's the truth. It has happened.
Sure.
And luckily, we have cameras. If we didn't, who knows how much has gone on before we had social media and before cameras. God bless these cameras on these phones, man. As intrusive as they are in our everyday life and everybody's on the phone, it's honestly a savior for people of color, or at least a way of getting justice, because even though people have died, there's video and people sometimes go to jail, but that's a whole nother thing.
I mean, are you ever sometimes I'm just sort of stunned when I try and take an objective position and look at the country. And sometimes I'm just stunned by culturally how much division there is between white America and black America. That there really are these two parallel countries almost.
It's wild, isn't it?
It's wild. The fact that I can tell the color of someone's skin by their accent, and that there's different music, different food, different cultural references, different way of dressing, different. I mean, it's amazing. It's amazing, really.
Well, what's even more amazing is that black culture is the foundation of this country, culturally speaking.
100%. Yeah, it is.
And, it's often snatched from us and then repackaged as something that somebody white has come up with. And then, we, for black people, or people of color all over, we have to survive in both worlds, whereas white people don't. They get to look in on our world, but unless they want to, they don't have to be part of it. But we have to be a part of the white world. And then there are those of us who who dance in both worlds for whatever reason, whether it be professional or maybe we're in an interracial relationship, and that's an art in itself, because then you get into microaggressions, you get into, do I have to present differently? There's so many layers.
You said something interesting right at the beginning that I put a pin in, and I want to go ahead and pull that out. Where you're saying that there are different things that black people and white people can do in this situation. Those were your words. What are those things?
Well, I can tell you right off the bat, the number one thing that white people can do is listen. Listen, 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 listen. And listen without commentary. Shut up and listen. Pretend you have no tongue. Just listen. A lot of times, because of privilege, people want to explain to people of color, the very people who have been experiencing this systemic racism for 400 plus years. But no, white people are going to tell us how it really is. There's a lot of that. And some of it, I really don't think comes from a place of malice. I just think people don't know any better, because we as a country have never had the conversation. We keep putting a Band-Aid on a wound that needs to be sutured up. You know what I mean?
For sure, yeah.
So when we talk about we don't talk about it, and everybody gets uncomfortable, and we don't go anywhere. So listen is the number one thing I would say for white people to do. Black people, we need to organize. And I know it's hard because this person thinks we need to do this. There's so many ideas of what needs to be done, but there needs to be some central message that we can all agree on. We have Black Lives Movement, and we have, of course, some other organizations, but we need a central idea of what it is we want and how we're going to get there.
Do you think the United States of America is capable of being truly integrated? Do you think we have it in us for those two streams of culture to actually become a single river of Americanness, whatever that would look like?
Yes, I think this is going to sound so harsh. I think a couple generations need to go first. But yes, 100%. I think my generation and the generation after me are the ones who are going to make the change. It's not going to be my parents, and it's certainly not going to be my grandparents, but 100%. But the problem with this country, we're so hesitant to change anything. We're so stuck in our ways. And I think because we've done so well as a nation for so long, we're really stubborn as a nation. And that's across the board. But yes, I 100% believe that we can get to an integrated society, or as integrated as possible. And we have moments. Unfortunately, it's usually during national tragedy where we come together. Something like this, it's there, but it's going to take an acknowledgement on a whole from white people to acknowledge how they've benefited from a system of slavery. Even now, it's gonna take. People have to acknowledge that we, as a people of color, are still affected by the system of slavery, how it's built into the system in every which way. And I always say that, people of color, we've succeeded in spite of, as opposed to on a whole. Of course, I'm not an individual white person, but white people have succeeded in this country because of. We've succeeded in spite of. I've been waiting to get that one out. Thank you.
Anytime. Do you think that the timing of this, the scale of these demonstrations, is related to the quarantine?
I mean, who the knows? Honestly, 2020 is just woof.
Woof, indeed.
I mean, I just think
what's going to happen in July? This is
right. No, I'm like,
next?
We're all holding our breath for June. I think, and I'm gonna get all like meta. I think the universe has been preparing for this for a long time. I think it definitely doesn't. I think it possibly fuels the fire because people already have so much pent-up aggression and rage over not having jobs and, 100,000 plus people dying out of nowhere. So possibly, but honestly, I think this has always been brewing. It's always on a braze, a slow and low. And somebody somewhere, these actions that happen in Georgia, Louisville, and obviously in Minnesota, the chef turned up the heat and now we're boiling over. The question is, what is going to happen after this? Are we turning the heat, the eye on a stove back down to a slow, low simmer, or are we gonna keep the heat on that pot? You know what I mean? Like, what next?
Or figure out how to take it off the stove eventually.
Or figure out, and ultimately, that's the end goal. But until we can have a real honest conversation as a nation, it's not going to happen. I think it does start with a conversation, and again, I just don't think that people are willing to have it.
My name's David Hoffman, and this is The Big Shut-In. I produce the show. It's a production of Race Car Radio, racecarradio.com. If you have feedback for me, or you have a story that you think I should hear, please feel free to reach out, thebigshut-in@racecarradio.com. Race Car Radio is a division of Citizen Race Car, Applied Imagination.